Pickup trucks and off-roading go together like peanut butter and jelly, or Saturday mornings and cartoons. Two of the latest off-road ready pickup trucks are the new 2022 GMC Sierra AT4X and the 2022 Ford F-150 Tremor. So how do these two off-road ready trucks compare against each other on-road and off the road? Let's go for a drive and find out. Let's start things off in the GMC Sierra AT4X. For 2022, it gets a refresh, a mid-cycle update if you want to call it that, but the powertrains are still the same. It is still powered by a 6.2-liter naturally aspirated V8, which produces 420 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. If you want the Duramax turbo diesel engine, then you'll have to opt for the Sierra AT4, the one without the X. That one doesn't have as many off-road goodies as this one though. But getting back to the V8, it is responsive and has enough low-end grunt to get the big truck going at a pretty good pace. However, it does need to rev just a little bit more than the engine in the Ford to reach the peak torque and peak power figures. The biggest drawback to this engine is the fuel economy. It is very thirsty, and GMC does recommend premium fuel with this 6.2. During my time with this truck, I have been really struggling to keep it below about 16 liters per 100 kilometers, and that does involve a little bit of highway driving. So in a city, if you stick to just city driving, this is going to be a very expensive truck at the fuel pumps. In the F-150, there's only one engine available with this Tremor package, the 3.5-liter twin-turbocharged V6. It produces 400 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. So a little bit less horsepower than the V8 in the Sierra, but more torque. Although it is a turbocharged engine, the response is very good. The turbochargers spool up very quickly, and again, because it is turbocharged, the peak torque is reached at lower RPMs than the peak torque in the 6.2 V8 in the Sierra. Car and Driver actually tested both of these trucks, although for the Sierra it was the Denali trim, not the AT4X trim, but it was still with the 6.2 V8. And the F-150 Tremor actually managed a 0 to 60 time of 5.3 seconds, and the GMC Sierra managed a 0 to 60 time of 5.4 seconds. Pretty similar, but the edge is with the Ford. No pun intended. Predictably, this 3.5 twin-turbo V6 also gets better fuel economy than that 6.2-liter V8 in the Sierra. Now in cities, I found it quite difficult to achieve the rated fuel economy numbers, but on highways, it was much easier. Overall though, on a city highway mix, I have been getting better numbers in this F-150 than I have been with the GMC Sierra. As for the transmissions, they both have the same 10-speed automatic. In fact, both GM and Ford co-developed this 10-speed automatic transmission, the hardware at least. The software, they went their separate ways. In the GMC, the shifts are really smooth and they're relatively quick. That is, unless you don't use the paddle shifters, or the paddle buttons, I should say, because they're only about yay big. In this F-150, the transmission has a bit of an odd characteristic, which apparently is completely normal. So when you set off, it actually skips second gear. It goes from first to third, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. And then it's the same thing when you slow down. It actually goes from third to first. This is only when you're accelerating at a normal pace. If you're more aggressive with the throttle, or you're in sport mode or tow haul mode, then it will actually use second gear. Now, the last time I drove an F-150 last year, it was the Power Boost, and it had the same 10-speed automatic transmission, and it did the exact same thing, first to third. But in that one, you can actually feel that skip between first and third. With this one, I think that Ford's engineers may have tweaked the software a bit, because now that skip from first to third or third to first is pretty much imperceivable. It is much smoother now. So again, a bit of an odd characteristic, but if the gauges didn't show me the 1 through 10 and which gear it's in this F-150 Tremor, I wouldn't even know that it was doing that. The driving dynamics of these two trucks are pretty similar. This GMC Sierra AT4X does feel a little bit more agile compared to the previous generation of the GMC Sierra. The AT4X trim didn't exist back then, but it does feel a little bit more agile. Steering is on the light side in both, and the suspension resists quite a lot of the body roll. Off the beaten path, the GMC Sierra AT4X is a bit more capable than the F-150 Tremor. The GMC has Multimatic DSSV suspension, which is not electronically adjustable, but the spool valves it uses provide specific on-road damping as well as good off-road compression and rebound movement. The truck is also 2 inches higher off the ground than the standard Sierra 1500, and it has locking front and rear differentials, which can be toggled at the flip of 2 switches in the cabin. The AT4X is also equipped with 33-inch Goodyear Wrangler Duratrac tires. The Ford F-150 Tremor receives a locking rear differential and can be optioned with a Torsen limited slip front differential. It too has 33-inch all-terrain tires, but these are general grabber tires, which are a little bit more balanced for on-road and off-road driving than the Goodyears in the Sierra. To help the F-150 tackle the off-road terrain, it is equipped with Trail Turn Assist. This locks the inside rear wheel when taking a sharp corner to better rotate the truck. It also receives off-road dampers, but they are not as sophisticated as the DSSV dampers in the AT4X. Both trucks have downhill assist modes along with heavy-duty underbody plates for added protection. They also have different drive modes to help with the specific off-road situation that you may put each truck in. For those that plan to do a lot of towing and carrying cargo in the bed, the F-150 can take more. Here are the towing and payload ratings for these off-road ready trucks. However, although both trucks have advertised 5.5 foot length beds, the bed in the Sierra is actually a little bit bigger than the one in the Ford. It is longer and the sidewalls are a bit taller. The total bed volume is 62.9 cubic feet for the AT4X and 52.8 cubic feet for the F-150 Tremor. As well, the Sierra's bed has more standard tie-down points for better load flexibility. And finally, we can't talk about pickup trucks without mentioning their tailgates. A lot of modern day trucks have multifunction tailgates, and these two are no exception. Starting with the Ford, it has a power tailgate, power down and also power up, optional on this Tremor. And of course, it also has the tailgate step. So just push that. There's your grab handle, and that makes it easier for you to get into the bed. It also has places where you can hold clamps in. It has a built-in ruler, indentation for a cup holder, pencil holders, and cell phone holder. Now, on the GMC Sierra, it has the multi-pro tailgate. It is not powered like the F-150, but it does have 6 different functions, including a workbench, a 2-tier load stop, and of course, an actual step. Like so. And this particular one also has the accessory stereo system built right into the tailgate. Between these two, I personally like this one more because the step just feels more sturdy on this one than it does on this one. I mean, it feels really shaky, whereas this one, much more solid. Plus, you also have the added benefit of having multiple functions like a load stop or 2-tier load stop and so on. So again, between the two, I much prefer the GMC Sierra's multi-pro tailgate. Before we get to the interiors of these two trucks, I briefly want to talk about the ride comfort and the NVH. In this Tremor, I actually find it to be a little bit softer than the GMC Sierra in terms of driving over bumps. Although the Sierra has those brilliant Multimatic DSSV dampers, the ride is still just a little bit more firm than the ride in this F-150. As well, the seats in the F-150 feel just a little bit softer than the seats in the Sierra. Mind you, that particular Sierra does have massaging front seats, but still, they're just a little bit too firm. And as for noises, it is the F-150 that's a little bit quieter, mainly due to the fact that it doesn't have quite as aggressive off-road tires as the GMC Sierra. Those Goodyear Wranglers make a lot of noise on the highways, whereas the general tires on this F-150, they do make a little bit of noise, but nowhere near as bad at higher speeds. Sitting inside the GMC Sierra, I can finally say that this interior looks like a product of the 2020s rather than the 2000s, like how the pre-facelifted version looked. It looks like a modern interior and one that is actually deserving of a next generation pickup truck. So obviously the main focus is the new touchscreen, which is 13.4 inches diagonally, if I remember off the top of my head. It runs a new Android Automotive infotainment system, and it actually runs really well. It's nice and smooth, graphics look crisp and clear, and it has a lot of Google built-in apps such as Google Maps, Google Assistant, Amazon Alexa. It's really nice, and I do genuinely like this infotainment system. Below it, GM has kept physical controls, which I really like. So all the climate controls are physical buttons. Unfortunately, they are in gloss black plastic, so fingerprints and smudges, dust, all of that is going to be easily visible on these controls. And further below, you have a few toggle switches for your front and rear lockers, lane departure warning, parking sensors, hazards, and so on. The shifter is also new. It's an electronic shifter, so there's a button on the side that you press, and then you can move it forwards or backwards to select different gears, and park is right on the top. As for the center console, it is very massive, as you would expect from a pickup truck. So your cup holders are right here, holds a small double-double just fine. Wireless phone charging pad has moved here in the center, so it's sort of covered a little bit by the center armrest, but you can still easily access your phone, and the center armrest is massive and deep. There's also USB ports in there as well. It doesn't flip up like the one in the Ford F-150, but the padding is nice and soft, and again, more than enough space in there. As for interior space in both of these pickup trucks, well, they are full-size American trucks, so even somebody as tall as myself at 6'4" feels small and insignificant in the cabin of these two trucks. So leg space is more than plentiful, same goes with headroom. In the back seats, I have plenty of space both in this Sierra and also the F-150 behind my own driving position. Outward visibility is really good in both of them. You sit really high up. Even though this seat is in its lowest position, I still have excellent visibility over smaller vehicles. The A-pillar on this GMC Sierra is a little bit on the thick side, but it's also the same story in the F-150, so just something to be aware of. Also, with this GMC Sierra, if you have passengers in the back and they're obscuring your view out the back, you can just flip up the mirror and you get an unobstructed view of the rear. The Ford F-150's interior doesn't see too many changes for the Tremor trim apart from the Tremor badges on the seats and the orange highlights. The infotainment screen is not as large at 12 inches, but it looks a little bit bigger. Possibly that's due to the fact that it's a bit more square than the widescreen format of the Sierra. The F-150 also uses physical buttons and knobs for the climate and vehicle controls, but they are not in gloss black, which I appreciate. The center console has loads of storage for small items, and the F-150 has a foldable gear selector. Doing so will allow you to flip over the lid of the center armrest to use it as a work table. Both trucks have storage bins underneath the rear seats, but the bin in the Ford is a bit larger and it can collapse when you're not using it. The 2022 GMC Sierra 1500 AT4X is the more expensive of the two trucks, with a starting price of $93,203 Canadian. As equipped, it costs $95,303 Canadian. The 2022 Ford F-150 Tremor starts at $63,145 Canadian, and as equipped, it is $85,240 Canadian. With the $10,000 difference of their as-equipped prices, you'd expect that the Sierra has more features, and you'd be right, but not $10,000 worth. The only features that really pop out are the rear camera mirror that I mentioned earlier, the massaging seats, which I also mentioned earlier, and the large head-up display. Other than that, both trucks have leather upholstery, heated and ventilated front seats, heated rear seats, heated steering wheels, surround view cameras, sunroofs, although it's panoramic sunroof in the Ford, dual zone automatic climate controls, remote start, wireless phone charging pads, and many other features that one would expect from trucks these days. One key feature that the Ford can be equipped with, but that is not available on this Sierra AT4X, is Blue Cruise, or Super Cruise on the GMC side. Both are hands-free driving systems on most highways across Canada and the United States. Super Cruise can be equipped on the Sierra Denali, but it cannot be equipped on this AT4X. On the outside, the Sierra AT4X has a slightly updated look for the 2022 model year with slimmer DRLs, a slightly reshaped grille, and slightly reshaped front bumper. Speaking of which, the Sierra does not receive the front bumper cutouts of the Silverado ZR2. Thus, the approach angle of 25.5 degrees is quite a bit less than the 31.8 degrees of the ZR2. That approach angle is also less than the approach angle of the Tremor, which is 27.6 degrees. The Sierra's breakover angle is 23.4 degrees and the departure angle is 23 degrees. The Tremor's breakover angle is 21.2 degrees and the departure is 24.3 degrees. The ground clearance of the AT4X is 11.1 inches, while the Tremor is 9.4 inches. And finally, for safety, both trucks are equipped with automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning and lane keep, blind spot sensors, rear cross traffic alert, parking sensors, and so on. However, most of these features are standard on the Sierra but optional on the F-150. But the IIHS gave the Ford a Top Safety Pick award, while the Sierra did not receive one. The reason is because the Ford F-150 performed better in the small overlap passenger side crash test than the GMC did. So between these two, which one is best? It's really hard to pick an overall winner because they're so similar. The best way to summarize these trucks is that the Ford F-150 Tremor is a pretty capable off-road pickup truck, but it excels at on-road comfort more than the Sierra. While the 2022 GMC Sierra AT4X is the opposite. It is a bit more capable off the beaten path, but the ride is firmer, the tires are louder, and the engine is less efficient. So it comes down to how you plan on using the truck. Will you be playing in the mud each and every weekend? In that case, the Sierra is your best option. Or will you stick primarily to city streets? Then it's the Ford that should be at the top of your list. Whichever one you choose though, they're both really great. And for me personally, I would probably go for the F-150 mainly because with my style of driving, I'd be sticking to city streets and very rarely would I actually go off-roading. Maybe once a month, if that. But that's just my opinion. What about yours? Which one of these two would you pick? Or would you pick the Ram 1500 or maybe the Toyota Tundra TRD Pro? Let me know in the comments. If you want to know more about either of these two trucks, I wrote a more detailed comparison review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck, or most likely it'll be an SUV next time. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.